This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to...
This is Nos Arietes.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
Save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rangers through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicoladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is good.
Seattle Sounders, the greatest MLS team in history.
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Portland can't say it's cheap.
We want to win. Let's see how the Sunday, bro.
Good for Seattle!
Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes, sponsored by Full Pull Wines and Watson's Counter. Joining me today to talk about the LAFC match on Wednesday is Travis Helwig, a TV writer and the host of the LAFC podcast, Happy Foot, Sad Foot. Thank you for joining us, Travis.
Thank you so much for having me. And Drew Carey, if you're listening, I like you. Thank you for buying us lunch every day.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that he's like a regular listener of the podcast.
Well, Drew, I'm a big fan.
Well, you bring this up, and I actually wanted to. I feel like we'll get to LAFC. Don't get me wrong, but one of the things that I have been fascinated by as someone who is in the Writers Guild and who has a very soft place in my heart for all things when it comes to labor, and especially that of writers' labor, is this ongoing writers' strike, and that you've tweeted about a few times and that you have some pretty good knowledge about. What can you tell us about the state of things right now, and sort of why should anyone care that writers are on strike?
Sure. I mean, we're going into our 8th week of a strike against major studios. The long and the short of it is that for a long time, TV writing was a career that, a lot of people might hear that you're a TV writer and go, oh, well, you're fine. You're like, no matter, like, you have a house at least, right?
Right.
And for a long time, that was the case. It was a lucrative career. As we all switched to streaming, our contracts did not cover streaming in the same way that they covered cable and broadcast TV. And the paychecks and the minimums that we were promised for so long suddenly went away. And slowly but surely, we realized that, oh, wait, LA is one of the most expensive, and New York, two of the most expensive places you could live in America. And a lot of our writers who are working gig to gig don't necessarily have the ability to even pay their rent anymore as working writers. And that was not the case 10 years ago. And something that people don't know about being a writer, especially a television writer, is you get those big paychecks, but you're only working sometimes 4 months out of the year. And so that money is supposed to sustain you until you're able to get your next gig. And so when that money shrinks and you still can't get another gig for a few months, you're suddenly working for a lot less money. The studios know this. They're happy about it. And they're, trying to end the writer's room as we know it. And we're trying to stop them. They also want to replace us with computers, but we can get into that if you want.
Well, yeah, we don't necessarily have to get into that part of it, but it does. I am curious, is this the same sort of fight that happened when things went from TV and sort of like the traditional way things where you would do a show and then go into syndication and you'd get residuals from that, and then when things moved to cable and it was presumably a different model? Or is this a completely different uncharted territory in terms of like how writers are being compensated?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. Like there is some, mega corporations are going to try to squeeze you at all times to this. But what is new about it is the fact that as we've shifted to streaming, anyone who watches TV knows that the number of episodes in a season have gone dramatically down. And I'm speaking strictly, I don't know a lot about film. I only have worked in TV, so I can only speak for the TV writers' concerns. But a lot of contracts, you get paid per episode, but you still have to work the same amount of time. So if you're working 20 weeks on a 22 episode show, you're getting paid a lot more than if you're working 20 weeks on an 8 episode show. Mm-hmm. And so that 20-week contract used to be worth a lot more than it is now. And a lot of that is because as we've shifted to streaming, they've gotten much more comfortable with these shorter runs. And I think as someone who likes art and television, at first I was very into the idea of these shorter run shows. Like they're often better when they're not as long. But our contracts have not yet been changed to reflect that new normal. And all we're saying is we would like to be able to afford the city we live in, and also have a job in a few years. Like it really is an existential fight for writers in a way that I don't think we anticipated it being when we went into these negotiations 3 months ago.
And so without getting too in the weeds, like how optimistic are you about this coming to a resolution that essentially allows for the continued profession of TV writer?
I mean, I think I am confident that we will win in the long run. There was a strike in 2007. That was about 30, or it was about 20 years ago now, a little bit less. And when that happened, there was not this level of solidarity with America and with the industry as a whole. People were not yet used to the idea of things being turned into a gig. So like journalism was a thriving profession back in 2007, or a taxi driver was a thriving profession. And these tech guys got into Hollywood and they're trying to turn writing into a gig. And I think when we express that, like they want to turn us into, gig workers, people understand what that means now. And they understand how these guys come in and disrupt a business. And what that means is they're going to make money and they're going to pay people less. And we are lucky in Hollywood to probably have the strongest union town left in America. We have a strong writers guild. We have a strong actors guild. And there's a world in which the actors might join us on strike soon. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. But one thing that's been amazing is that the Teamsters and IATSE, the Teamsters drive the trucks and IATSE is the crew union. They have, in a lot of cases, refused to cross a picket line, which didn't happen in 2007. So we've been shutting down productions left and right around Hollywood. And the more we can cause pain to these studios and the faster we can cause pain to their bottom line, the sooner they'll come back to the table and take us seriously. In 2007, we only shut down a single production. And last week in Hollywood, only one thing was still shooting in Los Angeles. That's how good of a job we've done at shutting down production. So we're causing them a lot of pain. We're hopeful that that means that they're going to eventually go, oh shit, we don't have anything coming up. We have no bottom line. And especially if the actors come and join us, they're negotiating right now. If the actors come and join us, they can't even do Dancing with the Stars. They can't do game shows. Everything goes away. So if the actors join us, I think the resolution will be actually faster because the studios will need something sooner. This might go on for another few months, but I'm very confident we're going to win with the level of solidarity we have, both in Hollywood and just in America writ large. It's a much more pro-union world we live in right now than 15 years ago.
So I'll just end this part on this. Is there anything that you think fans of TV can do to support you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think allowing. We can edit this silence out, as I think. I think there's a very tangible thing that they can do, which is to donate to the Entertainment Community Fund, which if you Google Entertainment Community Fund, you should be able to find it. And what that does, the writers have a really big strike fund. We're fine. If any of us fall on hard times, we have like $20 million in the bank that will get given by the union. We're okay. But the Entertainment Community Fund, what that does is it takes care of the crew members and the drivers and the below the line folks who might be suffering by us shutting down all these productions. And if you want to donate to that, I believe you just Google Entertainment Community Fund. And when you click donate, go down to it's like filmmaking or acting or something like that, just make sure you pick that in the drop down menu, and that'll go not to writers. If you don't want to donate to us, that's fine. It's going straight to crew members and below the line people who make less money than us, who are, might not be able to handle the strike as well. That's an entertainment community fund.
Thank you. And with all that said, let's talk about LAFC Sounders. A lighter subject. The game is Wednesday.
I will say, I brought up Drew Carey at the beginning because I don't know if your listeners know Drew Carey, obviously the sole owner of the Seattle Sounders in my mind. I don't know anything about your ownership group, but he has very nicely in 2 restaurants in Los Angeles said he will pay for lunch and dinner for anyone with a Writers Guild card who goes into that restaurant. He'll pay for tip. He'll pay for tax. He'll pay for anything they order. I've already taken him up on it. Truly an incredible thing for him to do. And if on the off chance he's listening, from all the writers, we say thank you, Drew. And also a good indication of how much money writers used to make on TV, that they could just buy someone lunch forever.
Right.
This is a crazy thing. Sorry, back to the game.
Well, take that, Will Ferrell.
Yeah, he ain't done shit.
Yeah, what's Will Ferrell been doing here? Jeez. So all that said, we have a game coming up on Wednesday. LAFC comes into this in a little, maybe a little wounded, a little limping. They did win their most recent game on Sunday or Saturday against Sporting Kansas City. Got a couple goals in the second half, including a very late goal from Carlos Vela. Then got absolutely bailed out by VAR to get 3 points in that one.
No comment.
Right. But that game, I think, had 3 goals overturned.
Yes. Yeah. Aaron Long scored one too. They called offsides. That was not offsides.
Right. And then there was another Vela goal that got ruled offside after that would have been at 3-1. Anyway, and then there was some penalty, whatever. We don't need to get into this. It was a wild game. But looking back at LAFC's record, obviously they lost to Leon in the CONCACAF Champions League final. I don't know if you guys know this, but you would have been the second team, actually, not the first.
Oh, I know. I didn't know that, and
people forget.
I immediately forgot that any MLS team ever won, and I only think about the time we got to the finals and came close to winning.
Right,
but we had some bad red cards, and we were there first. Getting close, but that's who remembers the past,
right? Exactly. But going all the way back to April 22nd is sort of when this stretch of a fixture congestion really began for LAFC in earnest. You've played. This will be your 16th game in 2 months, which is a lot. Which is a lot of games to play in a relatively short period of time. In the first 15 up to now, 4-6-5, which is not a horrible record, but is not exactly a great record. And in most recently, you had back-to-back losses to Houston Dynamo. Does it feel like the fixture because early in the season, it felt like you guys were just rolling out a first choice lineup every week and just steamrolling everyone. And then it does from a distance feel like maybe all of that started to catch up.
So there was a real level of cockiness that we had as a club and a fan base going into the Champions League final, where we were like, everyone said that if you go far in the Champions League,
right,
you'll suffer in Major League Soccer. Turns out that's not true. We're the best team in MLS history. Literally 4 weeks ago, I said on the podcast, if we win the Champions League final, we're the best team in MLS history. Then this past week on the podcast, I said, if we score 1 goal this weekend, it will be a win. That's how far we've fallen in 4 weeks. Basically what happened is what happened to Seattle last year, playing that amount of games with that amount of intensity and that amount of travel.
The travel, which I think is very underappreciated, both last year when the Sounders went through this, and I saw someone tweet about this, LAFC has traveled something like 30,000 miles already, which to put into context is like twice as many miles as many East Coast teams will travel all year. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's just wears you down. And over the course of that time, people get hurt and there's fatigue in general, but I would say, I think there's like 6 or 7 players on our team right now that are actively injured or recovering from injury. And it just, we're watching these games back to back, 2 games a week, and we're making up these games. And a lot of the time, yesterday or a few days ago, when we played Sporting Kansas City, I host a podcast about LAFC. There were 2 players on the bench I've never heard of. That's the how far we've fallen in such a period of time. So it's we were very cocky. We were very confident. Leon destroyed us, and then laid out a blueprint of how to beat us. And we've been sort of just trying to catch our breath since then. And hopefully, by Leagues Cup, we could catch our breath a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things that came out after the Leon loss was Steve Cherundolo in the post game, sort of going through a laundry list of explanations would be a nice way of saying it, but excuses would be another way of putting it. Basically saying how the deck is always stacked against MLS teams, and I think in a broad sense he was accurate in that Liga MX has fewer restrictions and therefore has some built-in advantages. But when you looked at the rosters, at least to me, it was like, wait a minute, LAFC has a better roster than Leon. This is not it. You might be right in the big picture sense, but if we're talking about why you lost this series, this doesn't seem to fly. And he sort of repeated some of the same stuff this last week against after the win against Sporting Kansas City, in terms of saying how the roster rules just are what's holding LAFC back. And I'm just curious, how's that stuff being received within the fan base? Is that like, yeah, you go tell him, Steve, or is it like, look, well, this is not what we want to hear right now?
I think this has probably been the least fun month to be an LAFC fan in the history of the team. Even the season where we didn't make the playoffs, we still were scoring a bunch of goals.
Mm-hmm.
We've played the worst soccer that we've seen as a team over the last, like before Kansas City, in the a few weeks leading up to it, we had scored 1 goal and been scored on 10 times. Like, that's how bad of a stretch we've had. So what Steve Cherundolo said in those, I'm not a roster rules expert. I think everyone agrees with him, but they're also sort of like, no one's really talking about it, to be honest, because we know we were roundly beaten. We know that we deserved to lose the Champions League final. We played much worse. And since then, the confidence in the team has plummeted. Our fan base's confidence in the team has plummeted. And it's really just trying to regain our footing in any way. So I think I think initially when he said that, there was a general sense of like, yeah, that's true, but it's besides the point. Right. And there's a few people calling for Steve Cherundolo to be fired. I don't agree with them.
There's always those voices.
It's especially in LA. I grew up in the Northeast, and we all know, as people who didn't grow up in LA, how lucky LA sports fans are. So when a team goes on a stretch of losses over 4 weeks, immediately the sky is falling, which it's like, I'm a Knicks fan. You're supposed to lose. That's right. What's normal.
Right. Yeah. The Lakers' run of ineptitude is now 2 years or something like that. And it's like, let me introduce you to the New York Knickerbockers.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's great. Like the one, I've lived in LA for 10 years now, and the one team I can't do is the Lakers. It's just like, it's just too good for too long. I'll be a Clippers fan if I have to. I love my Knicks.
Yeah. So I guess, what's your perspective on how Cherundolo has managed the congestion and sort of, certainly during his tenure, by far the most toughest stretch that he's had to deal with?
Yeah, I think he's had this is the first time I've seen him struggle to figure out how to solve the puzzle. I think the reason he's bringing up the roster rules so much is that his hands are tied a little bit, like where Timothy Tillman, Kellen Acosta, Chiellini, Aaron Long, all of these guys have been injured. Carlos Vela is looking very old and tired. Like, because of the congestion, there's only so much he can do. So he's been playing like our LAFC 2 academy players who are literally 17, 18 years old. So I think he's doing the best with what he can, and I do really trust him as a coach. But outside of this game in Kansas City, which I don't know if I want to, I'm not optimistic for our game against Seattle. I'll put it that way. I think it's good that we won, and it shows that we have that ability when we need to. And I'm very thankful we scored goals, because we hadn't done it in a while. But I don't think Steve Cherundolo has figured out how to crack the confidence puzzle that he's been gifted after our Champions League final loss. And we might not even have fucking Bawanga. I don't know if he'll be back for international duty in time for this match.
Well, yeah, that was, I'll add this line. I guarantee that as soon as you said that, a bunch of our listeners threw down whatever they were holding, and we're just like, God damn it, why did he have to say it? Because anytime someone comes on this podcast and talks about the bad place that their team is in, it's just like a rocket ship to the moon for them. I don't know if you followed the Sounders season very closely, but they have a decent record that is shockingly bad against teams that are in like really bad places. we
I
have
remember
ended,
Kansas City turned their whole season around.
they
when
did.
played.
Yeah. Kansas City turned their season around, and then Portland we played Portland when they were in the middle of a bad streak, and they beat us, and then what was the other? Austin was in a long winless streak. There's a few of these teams. So that might be weirdly work in your favor. I don't really believe in this kind of thing, but it does seem to be a trend. But yeah, I just saw Bouanga played like 74 minutes for Gabon. But that he's got a big flight. He's got probably like 24 hours of travel to get back to LA. Is your expectation that he's available in some capacity? And how much rotation are you expecting? It looked like they sort of rotated for Kansas City anyway, because they made a bunch of subs at halftime.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see a good number of our academy players still, just because of injuries. I would guarantee you're going to see Eric Duenas and Nathan Ordaz, both who I think are like 18 years old, and they're probably our two best academy players. Bouanga, I have no knowledge of when he's flying back. I will say earlier in the season, we had a game where he had played in Gabon. Gabon. I
don't either.
He had played in Africa, and then he had a layover in Turkey, and then flew to LA, landed in LA around 6 p.m., got to the stadium a little after 7, got put on the roster after the roster was released, and was brought onto the game in like the 60th or 70th minute and scored a goal. So I believe that if he wants to play, he will be able to. He actually has more energy than any person I've ever watched play. So if he wants to play, he will play, but I'm not sure about his travel at all. You're going to get a rotated team. Our midfield is really beaten up right now. And you know, I'm sure you guys know we're not jazzed about how Carlos Vela has been playing. It was so nice to see him do well against Kansas City, but he just looks old, and
right.
I'll never talk any shit about Carlos Vela. Our team would be nothing without him, but at some point it comes for us all. The slow creeping death is approaching all of us.
Yeah, I know. It's a sort of similar situation with Nicolas Ladero here, where he has, he's the reason that Sounders have won everything they've won in the last 7 years or whatever. But it does appear as though Father Time has finally unsheathed his. I don't know. Does a sickle have a sheath? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If it doesn't, it should.
Right. It would be much more dramatic if it could be whoosh.
It would be very difficult to.
Yeah, it would be difficult. Yeah. So anyway, that thing appears to be getting sharpened, and we don't know what's going on with him. I'll just share with you that Christian Roldan's going to be missing. Jordan Morris is going to be missing. Alex Roldan's going to be missing for international duty. MLS, through its infinite wisdom, has decided to play straight through, as you probably know, play straight through the Gold Cup, but then take a break for Leagues Cup, which really does cast into question where the priorities of this league are, where they are inventing competitions to detract from their own regular season.
I think money might be where they're
money. Yes. Money is probably a key factor here.
Well, they need to make the money to give it to Messi.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. How bummed are you? You guys were probably thinking Messi was going to come to LA and play on like a TAM contract or something, right?
I will say he was attached to Miami for so long, but it is impossible for us to be a fan of our team and not in the back of our heads be like, why wouldn't you want to come here? Like,
right.
You want to go to Fort Lauderdale, dude?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're going to go play in a temporary facility in Fort Lauderdale instead of you could put the games in SoFi here. It'd be the...
I mean, I'm very excited, but what's funny is, like, in the back of all LAFC fans' head is that 2 weeks from now the transfer window opens, and if we know anything, it's that our front office is really good at recruiting folks. We have an open DP slot despite all of this, so it's like we almost got Aubameyang as our striker earlier in the year, so there's a very real optimism that reinforcements are on their way. We just have to make it through this stretch, and we're probably going to lose more than we want to lose over the next month. And that's just the reality of it.
I mean, it is wild when you look at LAFC's schedule, because as if playing 16 games in 2 months wasn't enough, you play again on the weekend, and then you have a week off, and then it's 2 games a week, basically up until the Leagues Cup break.
Yeah.
And I think at that point you will have caught up in terms of the fixture, the games at hand that you had stacked up during the Champions League run. But it's been wild to sort of see this happen to another team as a Sounders fan, to sort of see like, oh yeah, this is like because it did start to feel like LAFC had cracked the code. They had figured out that if you sign enough talented players that are young enough and that are healthy enough, that you can just play through anything. And it appears it's maybe not quite that easy. Although who knows? I don't think anyone would be surprised if LAFC at the end of the season, LAFC is sort of standing and being like, yep, we had it all figured out all along. It was just this short, brief period.
Yeah, I mean, we had a bad run in the middle of last year too, and so there is some optimism. But I said this on the podcast. It's like you look at Seattle and they never figured out how to get the wheels back on the cart. Like the injuries were just too bad, and so it really is an important couple weeks for us where we got to get confidence back, because the team does not look happy or confident. And that's scary. We haven't seen that as a team since Bob Bradley was here. And so we just I think that Kansas City win is going to go a long way, because scoring a goal seemed impossible for so long. But really, when Denny Bouanga isn't around, our offense or our offensive threats aren't that threatening at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys take a little longer to figure it out, because
we'll give you one.
Yeah. We would appreciate it. We really would appreciate it. But Travis,
it's easier to win at BMO on a Wednesday than a Saturday.
Yeah,
it's
that's
coming
a good
at a good time.
Yeah, that's. I would imagine that I can imagine it's, even though the 32-52 will probably still be rocking. It does seem like there's a big difference between when it's just the 32-52 rocking, and then there's it looks like an LA crowd on a Wednesday.
I would say, I used to talk shit about LA fans, and then I realized that it literally is just the traffic. So they're trying to get to the game,
right?
But they can't. So usually around halftime, they've succeeded in parking and getting into the stadium, but they're trying to get there. You just can't get there. I don't know, Dodger Stadium, I used to watch games. I'd be like, oh, it's just an empty stadium, and it's one of the worst parking experiences of my life. That's literally the problem. Was there a question? I don't remember.
There was no question. I think it was just saying, wishing you bad luck this week.
You as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But better luck in the writer's strike, because I do feel like this is if you are obviously if you are a fan of the media that we all consume, you should be rooting for the writers. And if you are a fan of people having jobs and being able to make a living, you should be rooting for the writers. And there's not a lot of really good reasons to be rooting for the studio execs in this one. So hopefully people recognize that, and they can get past the annoyance of maybe not having the show they wanted available exactly when they wanted it.
I will say, we're not asking anyone to cry for us. We know that working in Hollywood is a really cool thing, and a lot of us make a good amount of money. Not most of us, but a lot of us. And I just want to say, if you have any qualms about rooting for us, there was an anonymous Apple TV executive who said this in an interview, I think, to the Hollywood Reporter this week. They said something along the lines of, it's not that we can't afford the writers' demands. It's that if we let them win, it will encourage unionization in other parts of our business. So because we are
the
such
quiet part out loud,
it was insane. We were like, I can't believe you went on the record with this. But I mean, they were anonymous, but it's still wild that they said that. So if you have any qualms about supporting people working in Hollywood, know that the way the studios are looking at it, this isn't just about us. It's about the factory workers that are making the phones. It's about the other parts of their businesses. And it's about unionization as a whole. We're one of the last really strong union towns in America. And if we don't win this fight, that might not be the case soon.
Yep. Well, that's a good place to end this. Travis, thank you so much for joining us. You're on Twitter. You're just Travis Helwig on Twitter, right?
Yes. TravisHelwig. And if you want to listen to the podcast, just look up Happy Foot, Sad Foot, wherever you get your podcast. They're usually pretty short. Oh, we do post-game live streams on YouTube too, where we have people call in and we don't screen the calls. So if your listeners want to call in and make fun of us when you beat us on Wednesday, we can't stop you. So look us up on YouTube.
Perfect. That's right up our alley. But Travis, thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast, and hopefully we have a good one on Wednesday. I'm Jeremiah Shan. This is No Stadiates, and we'll catch you next time.
We love you. Let's win another one!